guys, welcome back to First and 10 over here on Clueless Gamers. I'm your host, Pete, joined in a second, as always, by my co-host, Brian. Guys, welcome in. We're going to be talking about week number 4. Crazy that we're already there, but we're, I guess, at, Brian, the quarter mark, sort of. Now things are weird with 17 games, so it's a little bit uneven. But the first month of football is about to end this coming Monday, technically. Well, we'll have 2 more Monday night games. I hate when they do that. We're recording this the day after the Cowboys and the Giants. We'll be talking loads about that, and we'll pick out a couple other, maybe 2 or 3 other games that went on this past week to recount all those games, where those teams are trending in the first month of the season, and of course at the end, we will give our picks for this upcoming week. And Brian, with all that being said, man, I welcome you in. How you doing tonight? Welcome into the show, and hey, a rare Friday record for us. How's that day off?
Yeah, a rare one indeed. The last couple times we've been on Thursdays, so we've gotten a chance to preview the Thursday game, but the beauty of doing it on Fridays, we now have a game to recap in addition to looking ahead at the full week 4 slate. So lots of football to get into, and what's been, I think, fair to say, a pretty wacky start to the season with a lot of strange results, a lot of underdogs seeming to rule the roost, if you will, and not been a good start to the season for bettors, I hear. So, yeah, lot to get to.
Yeah, it's definitely wacky is the perfect way to describe it, right? We have teams that are 1-2 or 0-3 that we're typically used to seeing them be way better at the top of the league, and then B, looking at some of those same teams, and you're like, hold on. Even though their record doesn't show it, are those teams better than some of these 3-0 teams? Like it's a really weird thing. Quarterback play is almost across the entire league is down for the most part. Defenses are ruling, which we're used to seeing in the early way, but not to this level across the entire National Football League. It's just been strange. We had a record set this past week by a rookie quarterback, which I'm sure we will talk about that game as well. A lot of odd stuff, and of course, injuries have been incredible this season. Up there in like 2 or 3 seasons in my life that I've been like, damn, in the first month of the year, we have a lot of star players, a lot of fantasy guys hurt and out for long periods of time. Yeah, a lot to talk about there. And let's start, Bri, with the Cowboys and the Giants. The Cowboys coming to MetLife last night, getting the victory 20-15 in what was a ugly game. If you watched this whole game like I did, it wasn't super entertaining. Cowboys ended up with 11 penalties. It was sloppy. Daniel Jones couldn't throw the ball down the field. We ended up with a couple star players getting dinged up in DeMarcus Lawrence. Micah, now they're saying today, has a high ankle sprain. Is he going to miss the next game or two? We'll have to monitor that situation. All in all, a really sloppy game. And Bri, I want to start on, as it feels, right, as we usually do with the winning team, but also it's the Cowboys, right? And we always even end up talking about them even when they don't deserve it. And they get back to 2-2. They're at 500, Bri, but you can't be impressed after last night's game. I have not been impressed with them really since week 1. And in week 1, it was more of a special teams defense thing. Even the offense and Dak didn't look that good in week 1 against Cleveland. We know they got pretty much rolled in the next 2 weeks. I'm not counting their fluky fourth quarter antics and garbage time, which they always do against the Ravens. And then in a team that they own, now Dak has won 13 straight games against the Giants. That doesn't even sound real, that is even possible for a player out there. It was a super sloppy game. This wasn't like last year when I think they outscored the Giants like 89-17, 88-17, something like that in their 2 matchups. This was a fight. And the Giants had their chances, particularly in the red zone, inside the 20, inside the 30, and settled for field goals. I came away more from this game going, I feel pretty confident in both of our picks that this team's not going to make the playoffs. And, like, of course they could, statistically. Obviously, they're 2-2. But you look at their upcoming schedule, which we'll get to in a second after you go, I just don't feel good. Now they got 2 of their big defensive players are dinged up. Maybe one of them is missing a couple weeks. How are you feeling about the Cowboys, even in a win last night?
Yeah, no, I think you make a lot of good points there. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of questions with this team, as there seemingly always is, and it just always seems like what it comes down to is they have the ability to beat up on the bad teams, but they didn't even beat up on the
No.
Giants yesterday like they did, as you mentioned, last year, where week one 40-0 blowout, and then they blew him out later in the season when Tommy DeVito was under center before his real coming out party. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that you just kind of wonder just how good is this team right now. I will say, like, the defense is probably a more impressive performance from their side. I mean, they had gotten gashed on the ground
Yeah.
the two previous weeks, and they held the Giants to it was like 1.1 yards per
Yeah, it
carry.
was good.
So they definitely clamped down on that side, and it was kind of a weird game because, like you said, it was sloppy and it wasn't the best game to watch, but you look at the quarterback numbers, they both complete a high percentage of their passes, but there wasn't really a whole lot of chances taken. I mean, Dak had the
No.
one play to CD Lamb for the touchdown,
It was kind of like
but
a
with
broken
Daniel
play.
Jones, yeah, and with Jones, it was a lot of just kind of dinking and dunking, and like you said, settling for field goals. I kept waiting for like the one big play that the Giants were going to make because they were right there in this game. They were toe to toe all the
Yeah.
way, and all it took was one play for them to break through and get in the end zone and have themselves a chance to win, but it never happened. They kept settling for these short passes. I mean, they had two receivers go for double-digit catches. The rookie sensation, of course,
He's
Neighbors,
been
and
excellent.
then Wandell Robinson out of nowhere has 11 catches, but it just wasn't good enough. Nothing on the ground, couldn't finish drives. I mean, the field goal kicker obviously did his job, going 5 for 5, but in the end, on the Giants side, they just proved not quite good enough.
Yeah, you look at it. I'm looking at the reports here today from Tom Pelissero of NFL Network and a few others. They're saying at the moment doesn't seem like a long-term injury for Lawrence and Parsons, but they're going to miss multiple weeks. Particularly Lawrence is what they're saying. That is what the Cowboys are expecting, and of course Lawrence leads the team with kind of a pedestrian 3 sacks through the first 4 games. That's a significant loss, Brian. If these guys even miss a couple weeks combined, the two of them, what is this team even more so? And we know they have absolutely no running game. Yes, last night against kind of a, I'd say bottom 5 rush attack in the league in the Giants, they turned their league worst rush defense into something that looked formidable last night. Kudos to them. Kudos to Mike Zimmer. That was a great job last night. But the Giants had chances in this game. Look at all the
Yeah.
drive stats. Even if you didn't watch the game, look at play by play. See how far the Giants are keep methodically getting down the field. And just because Daniel Jones has some clear limitations, as everyone knows, and we've talked about many times on this podcast, that is why the Giants will win this game. You put almost any other team, I'm pretty confident, outside of maybe the Titans and the Patriots, they're winning that game last night. And that is a concerning situation, I think, for the Cowboys. Yes, great job by them that a win is a win, right? Like that is the most important thing to do. They would have been in free fall if they were 1-3. But Dak beats up on the NFC East. He beats up particularly on the Commanders and the Giants. As I said, 13 in a row against the Giants. I don't think that's a measuring stick to think this team is a good football team right now. Could they get to becoming a good team? Sure. But right now, through the first month in the season, I think you wouldn't be objective if anyone called this team a playoff or Super Bowl contending or even fringe team right now.
Yeah, no, I mean, we both said it coming into the year. We had our concerns about this team. I felt like the future was very much in flux, what they were going to do at head coach. It
Yeah.
just feels like they're looking already ahead, that the Mike McCarthy era is going to end, whether it's in season or at the end of the year. They're going to make a change. There's a lot of rumors swirling about Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
I'm not
As
really
they always
buying
do.
that right now. But right, of course, that's with the Cowboys name and with the name Bill Belichick, that's going to come up. I just don't think that's going to be what Jerry Jones opts for. It just feels like as long as Jerry Jones is in charge, this team doesn't quite have what it takes. They have enough talent most years, but It just seems to be more about the show than it is the football team, and it sets this team back.
Which you've said many times on this show, on this podcast that we've done. And I think you've been clearly right, and you're getting proven that week in, week out. But, I think it's funny that there was pundits out there before the season started that said, this offensive line, they'll figure it out. The running game doesn't matter. To losing Tony Pollard, who, we think is okay. He's nothing special, but still, he was something in this offense. Having Dowell back there and a shell of what Zeke used to be, like Deuce Vaughn, like these guys are nothing. And I'm sorry, like if you need at least a somewhat serviceable back to be getting things done. I mean, hell, I don't think Devin Singletary is at the top of the league, but he would definitely be by far the best running back if he was not on the Giants and he was on the Cowboys right now. Like, it's just not good enough. And these things do matter. It's not like, hey, Bri, they drafted a 6 foot, 225-pound rookie running back in the 5th round, and he looks pretty great. Like, there's no infusion of talent. There's no burst. There's no nothing there. And that plus the offensive line that's kind of tattered together, no weapons consistently outside of CD Lamb, and now a defense that I've thought for the last 2 years is very overrated, and now is even more banged up than when they came into the season when they lost Bland and some other guys. I think there's a lot to be concerned. I mean, you look at here. Now, obviously, they get a little bit of a mini bye, right? They get 10 days off. But they play the Steelers next on Sunday Night Football. Then they have the Lions. They hit a bye, come out of the bye and play the Niners, the Falcons, the Eagles, the Texans, and we'll talk about in a second, the Commanders. I mean, that's bang, 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 consistently every week. Their next quote-unquote almost gimme game, winnable game is when they play the Giants again in Week 13 on another Thursday night game, which will be Thanksgiving. Like, look at that stretch. That's insane to think that this team right now that's 2-2, barely 2-2, that they just got over the hump last night, is gonna go on a run here. I mean, I'm sorry. I look at all these games, Bri. I could easily see them only winning 2 out of all those games. I really could, right? The way the Steelers defense is playing right now, you got the Lions that you're going to be playing there. We know how loaded they are, even though they haven't lived up to their potential. We know San Francisco has historically, playoffs or regular season, has demolished them, and they're in San Fran on a primetime Sunday night game for that. Atlanta, 1 o'clock Kirk there. That could be a solid game. The Eagles. And then you're playing the Texans Monday night, and what the Commanders have turned into in Washington? I mean, it's insane.
That's a very tough schedule. I mean, yeah, they have a lot to prove. There's no doubt. I mean, and as for, like the quarterback, we think is fine. Like Dak Prescott is a good player. He's not a great player. He's never going to be an elite, a top 5 level quarterback. He's a fine quarterback. They have so many far bigger issues that go beyond the quarterback. Everybody always wants to talk about the quarterback. With the Cowboys, it's a lot deeper than that. I will say my final thought on them, and I know he missed one of his field goals last night, a 51-yarder, but the kicker, Brandon Aubrey, this guy,
crazy.
I mean, Tucker's great. He might be the best kicker I've seen. I mean, he kicked the one in the game yesterday, a 60-yarder. It was like not even a stressful kick. It was just like a free and easy motion, bang, 60 yards, like it was nothing. Before his one miss late in the game yesterday, he had been perfect on kicks over 50 yards in his career. Yep. I mean, he is really a weapon.
Yeah, he's incredible. He is the best kicker in football. I think that title has totally passed to him, especially the way Tucker started out this season. And he is a weapon for them, and that is something the Cowboys do have going. They have a solid special teams there led by Rams coach John Bones Fossil there. But overall, the defense, this offense it's okay. They're going to beat on the bad teams, but they go against other teams that are solid or teams that are way better than them. They're going to lose, and they're potentially going to get steamrolled like they did against the Saints and did for much of the game against Baltimore. It seems like their home field advantage is gone. I don't know. There's a lot to be concerned there. And before we move on, I did want to give a little bit of props to the Giants. They're clearly limited by what they can do, but I think this is why I'm an advocate for Daboll. I think the team is fighting. There is something there. They came off the great performance against Cleveland last week. They come back in this game. They had chances to win this. They are limited by their quarterback. I think next season they draft a quarterback. If he's even solid above Daniel Jones, and he's just a solid, kind of like Dak Kirk Cousins level player, this is going to be a solid team. And especially if they keep building around it. You got a legitimate weapon. The offensive line's pretty good. They spent a lot of money on that this offseason. That defensive line is ferocious. They add a little bit more to the back end, maybe another weapon, and another solid 2 in there. You got Wandale at the 3. They could be a really interesting team come next year. It's just going to be all about hitting on that quarterback, which, as we know, is the toughest thing to predict really in sports.
Yeah, I mean, I think we left the team for dead after week one was a total no-show against Minnesota. But what we then come to find out is that the Vikings are actually pretty good,
Yeah.
3-0 through their first 3 games. So that loss actually doesn't look quite as bad, except that the play was just abysmal in that game. But you take that out, they've now played 3 straight games while they haven't set the world on fire. They've been competitive now in 3 in a row. And I know we don't think too much of Daniel Jones. He hasn't been awful
No.
these last 3 weeks.
No.
So he's been better. I think he's kind of taken some of the pressure off as far as an immediate quarterback change. I mean, the way it was looking, it was as if we were going to see Drew Lock, by week 5 maybe. And I think that's now off the table. He's kind of settled it down. The offense is just running with more efficiency. Like you said, the line is keeping him upright. Singletary has been serviceable as long as he can hang on to the football. Fumbles have been an issue.
Yeah.
Neighbors has already proven he's a legitimate number one. So there are some things where you're starting to see the semblance of a team fall into place. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think there is definitely hope there for all the Big Blue fans out there. Brian, let's wind the clock back a little bit to the previous Thursday game. And I know people watching this is a little bit ago, but this is when we recorded it because we actually recorded an hour before this game. Jets, Patriots, and Brian, this is more of kind of a victory lap little moment for you because I'm sure in the last 10 years you haven't gotten too many of those. The Jets beat the Patriots 24-3, and honestly, the score doesn't even do justice that this game wasn't even that close. The Jets controlled this game pretty much wire to wire. By far the best Rodgers has looked in these 3 games. Honestly, I thought he looked like the year before he left Green Bay. Like where that last year in Green Bay, he did not look great. That felt more like his MVP season, the way he was moving around. He seems like he got a little bit of confidence that, okay, I'm all right on this Achilles. Like, we're okay. Like, I can move around here. I can do what I do outside the pocket and kind of move safeties with my eyes as I'm running to my right. I enjoy watching him play football. And I did wonder, and I think it was fair, there was a lot of people out there to wonder, would we ever see that Aaron Rodgers again? I don't need him to be MVP of the league, but like, was he going to be a top 15 guy? Or was he just going to be like a statue and not be able to move anymore, which is always a huge part of his game? This gave me a lot of hope in what this offense can be. And I know the Patriots are kind of woeful. I understand that. But the defense looked like it should. What we were promised coming into the season, they look significantly better. I think there's a lot of reason there, even against the Patriots, to get that monkey off the back. You hadn't beaten them there in MetLife since 2015. To just knock that out, do it, and progress forward, get to 2-1. I mean, you got to be feeling great, I would imagine, after that one.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, I honestly don't believe I recall a game where the Jets outclassed the opponent more than they did in this game. I mean, like you said, the score wasn't indicative. I would say, like, if there was one quibble about the game, it's that the Jets should have scored more than 24 points. They could have scored 40 and just been a complete, running out of the building. But as it was, I mean, they outgained him, I think, at a ratio of like 4-1 in this game. They had like over 400 yards of offense.
Yeah,
the
almost.
Patriots had in 100. So
Yeah.
it was just an overmatch from start to finish. Like you said, Rodgers looked by far the best he has. The difference was the mobility. We talked about that as a concern for him. If you just a statue in the pocket, that's not when he's going to be his most effective. But he showed that he could move a bit. He could move in the pocket. and he was throwing and he was finding open receivers. It was really a thing of beauty, and the defense harassed Jacoby Brissett and the overmatched Patriots offensive line. I mean, right from the start, they were just moving the ball and the defense was dominating. It was like they smelled blood early
Yeah.
and they cruised in this game. I mean, it was as one-sided as it could be.
Yeah, you look at it and you mentioned the yards 400 to 139 in favor of the Jets. You look at the 7 sacks, right? The Patriots starting 2 rookie offensive linemen there. But you know what? I want to give a shout out and kind of give you a second to talk about. Shout out Will McDonald, man. A guy that was drafted the year before, did not look like he was going to be much of a player, really was a no-show at all last season. And for him to have 2 sacks in this game, for this season having a solid season to start here out of Iowa State, which he was a couple years removed, I think if you could get him to play at the caliber he's playing right now, you don't need a Hassan Reddick. Like, this could be that missing piece that we didn't see coming into the season for your pass rushing unit.
Yeah, I mean, and they're gonna need him because Jermaine Johnson out for the season, so that's a big loss on the defensive side of the ball. So, yeah, I mean, they're gonna need production from defensive linemen. They got it in this game from him, and then one guy I want to shout out too on the offensive side is they finally got Tyler Conklin going, the
Yeah.
tight end, and it's nice to, have multiple weapons where it's not just Garrett Wilson.
Yeah.
It seems like Rodgers is still finding the chemistry with Wilson. It's been a beat off, I think it's fair to say,
Mm.
through the first 3 games. I mean, they'll be fine going forward, but they haven't been completely in sync. So in the Patriot game, you got a nice contribution from the tight end. You started to see Mike Williams integrate in the mix and what he can do with his big body in the red zone. So they've got some weapons, and for Rodgers, you can keep him upright and keep him healthy for the duration of the season. Things could be a lot better than I worried about coming into the season.
Now, in this game, you did lose Morgan Moses. He's going to be out for a little bit here. And this is why I was so proud of them that you drafted an offensive tackle in the first round this year. You needed to ensure the depth where you have 2 very old, often injury prone offensive tackles. I think that was a smart move by the Jets. I know it's tempting, right? Because look how great a start of his career Brock Bowers has had already. But making the smart move to keep Rodgers upright because you know what it looks like without him, I think was the decision to go to. And hey, you can have kind of a 1-2 punch here in Hall and Allen. You got something cooking there as well. I really have liked this kid, what he's provided out of the backfield as a receiver and as a rusher. There's some makings here, Brian, where this offense could be maybe even a little bit better than I or most people kind of anticipated, as long as you keep Rodgers upright.
Yeah, and I think having the backup running back get some run is good for Brees Hall. That it allows him to be a little fresher.
Yeah.
The season gets deeper where you don't have to give him a full workload, 30 touches in a game and he ends up wearing down. You can kind of get him off his feet and allow Allen to get in the flow of the game, bring his skill set into the mix, and you have a nice little 1-2 punch, and,
Yeah.
and that's really what's kind of emerged.
Yeah, I really liked it. And then, there's really nothing to talk about on the Patriots side beside, hey, it was nice that Drake May got in at the end of the game, got some snaps. I think regardless, it seems like teams always give in with plans, right? At some point, he's going to end up starting. Should he? No. But he's going to end up starting at some point this season, and he's probably going to look dreadful because this Patriots team, it's not even his fault. There's no one there. The offensive line is the worst I've ever seen their offensive line, where they've always had historically great offensive lines under Dante Scarnecchia and all those days in Bill Belichick. And now there's no weapons. There's no nothing. I mean, you really got Ramondre, and that's about it. Like, the team is bad. The defense has only a couple guys there. The Patriots they're what's a word for beyond rebuild mode? I mean, it just seems like they are so deep in the woods, it's going to take half a decade to really even rebuild any semblance of a playoff type team. I'm sorry to any Pats fans or any Boston area natives you end up listening to this. I wouldn't have much hope in what your team is right now.
Oh, I will say, they started out of the gates with a win. I know it's against a Cincinnati team that's been struggling to start the year. They did win there, and then the game against Seattle goes to overtime. So the
Mm.
first two games, they were playing competitive football, and then they get to the Jet game, and it was just a total no show. So we'll see how it goes going forward. I mean, I'm with you 100%. The talent level is not there. It's going to be a while before they build this team up, but you wonder, Gerard Mayo, new voice as the head coach, his message will get through and have his team ready to play week in and week out. They certainly have to bounce back after the no-show
Yeah,
last time out.
I mean, I definitely appreciate the competitiveness they had in those first two games. We don't know what Mayo is going to be, but when Demario Douglas, and no offense to him whatsoever, is by far your main weapon offense, you're not going anywhere. And you got Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball. Like, we're just, there's a very low ceiling. It's like almost like a crawl space for this team, and there's only so much they can move. I think it's more of a detriment to the Bengals and the Seahawks that they didn't blow this team out. Like, to me, I look at that more, the Bengals losing and the Seahawks taking overtime to win it. To me, that's more of a knock on those teams than it is where, hey, Patriots, solid job, right? Like, you were competitive, but you're a professional. That's what you're supposed to do. It's just their talent is not even comparable to most of the teams in the league right now. Brian, let's go over to another game that we talked about from week 3, and we got to talk about it. And I think we looked over this team. I'm not jumping over the shark. It's only 3 weeks, but they're 3-0, and I'm talking about the Minnesota Vikings. They blast the Texans 34-7. This is a team that I said was going to be competitive, but I still had in the basement of their division. Man, do they look good. And I understand it's 3 games and everyone's expecting Darnold to go back to being Darnold and all this stuff. Could we just for a second entertain? Maybe he won't. Like, maybe we know this guy has talent. We know he has what we think is a great head coach in Kevin O'Connell, a great offensive mind, learned under Sean McVay, the Sean McVay coaching tree. Who's to say that with the offensive weapons they have, with Addison even being banged up, imagine when you're getting him at full strength and back out there. And this defense under Brian Flores it's what, them and the Steelers are the 2 best defenses in the league, and then I don't think anyone's really close to them after that. It's incredible what's going on there for Skull Nation right now. They are playing so well, and they're beating quality teams. All right, week 1, it's the Giants. Okay, they blast the Niners. That game was even that score does another situation does not indicate how much they blasted that team, and they own the Texans this past week. The Texans had no shot. That's the worst C.J. Stroud has ever looked in his NFL career. We saw the little sound clip a couple weeks ago of Brock Purdy coming up and saying, about Brian Flores' defense, your scheme is crazy, man. Like, for him to say that, learning under the feet of Kyle Shanahan, it's a complicated and well-run system. Now you see what C.J. Stroud wasn't able to do. Shout out, man, Vikings, man. I got to give it to him. What a game start to finish.
You'll probably recall I had this team finishing second
You did.
place in the NFC North, and maybe I was too low on them. Maybe I should have had them winning the division. I mean, I don't know that I'd go that far, but yeah, it's been an impressive start. And when you can dominate a game against a quality opponent the way they did, I mean, they were a home underdog in this game. Now, I picked them to win. I think you may have had
I
Houston.
did.
I could not have expected that they would blow the Texans out in this game like they did, dominating both sides of the ball. I mean, the defense, like you said, effective early. They had an early interception of Stroud. He just never into a rhythm in this game. And then the offense, Darnold continues to take the next step. Seems like he's dodged a bullet because we heard he was going in for
Yeah.
an MRI after the game. Turned out not a big deal with the knee injury, so I think he's going to be good to go
That's what
for
they're
their
saying.
upcoming game and what's going to be a fascinating game as they hit Lambeau Field on
Oh, we'll
Sunday,
talk about
which is
that.
definitely one of the games to watch. But yeah, I mean they're 3-0. They're riding high. It's just nice when a quarterback gets to a spot where the team fully buys in on what he can do, and I feel like that's what's happened with Darnold. That was not the case with the Jets, with the 49ers. He's a
With
backup.
the
Carolina,
Panthers, right? Like, come
right,
on.
exactly. So now He's getting his chance to shine. He's got good players around him. He's got the best receiver in the league at his disposal. Addison is going to be back in the mix this week, making his second start of the year. Aaron Jones, loved the addition of him in the
He's been
backfield.
great.
So I think they have all the pieces in place. I don't think this is a case where it's a good start and we're going to be wondering about the Vikings in the later part of the season. I think this team is for real. I don't think they're going to win 13 games, but I think they're going to be in the mix for the playoffs when it's all said and done.
You know what's weird, Brian? Let me throw this at you. Like, yeah, maybe they don't win 13 games, but right now through 3 weeks, and I understand it's early, this team seems stronger and like better constructed and more of a threat than that Kirk Cousins 13 win team did a couple years ago. Like that team felt a little bit fluky, right? Like they had won all those one score games, and that famous game up in Buffalo. But there was something about like you knew Kirk would be 1 o'clock Kirk at primetime Kirk at some point. There just seemed like that defense was not that great. This defense is crazy right now. And the way Darnold is playing, where he is not turning over the football, he's playing consistent. They have legitimate weapons here. In Addison, in Jefferson, in Jones. Powell, I like. The Naylor kid is good. Like, there are pieces here. And this offensive line is pretty solid where you're like, okay, like this team, even if they win 10, 11 games, I'm like, they're a legit threat come playoff time.
And remember too, TJ Hawkinson, one of the best tight ends in the game, he hasn't even been out there yet.
Yeah.
He's been hurt, so you expect him back at some point. I don't know exactly what his timetable is, but he should be returning to the mix. So that's just another weapon there on that offense. And I'm with you. Like 2 years ago, that team, it felt very fluky. It
Exactly.
didn't feel like it was sustainable. I think everybody was sort of like not believing in the team. And then there was that one game where they're at home against the Cowboys and they lost, I want to say 40-3
I think they
on their
did.
home field.
Yeah.
And it was like after that, people were like, yeah, our opinions have been validated. This team just isn't any good. They still had their moments. They had that crazy game in Buffalo later in that year, but it just wasn't enough. This year, they're just out here steamrolling people early in the season. So I'm with you. It feels like a stronger unit, both sides of the ball, and a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, they also had that crazy comeback too. What team were they playing where they had like the biggest comeback at home ever? I can't remember that game, but
Oh, the Colts.
that's right, the Colts
Colts.
game. They also had that game that season. Like there was a lot of weird games that season, and I think this team just feels better constructed for the long term. And I caution patience, right? Because it's only 3 games. I'm not jumping the shark, but maybe we should give Sam Darnold a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Maybe we should go, this guy's got some talent, but we always said he was reckless. Well, maybe he's changed his game. Maybe this is a solid player. He doesn't have to be a superstar. Maybe this is a solid player and he's finally in a winning type culture. I think that's something to look at. And on the other side, Brian, for the Texans, you know, they haven't looked great. Let's just be real, right? Like it's been bumpy. This supposed high flying offense has looked pretty pedestrian through the first 3 weeks of the season. I'm not panicking. I still think they're easily going to win their division. I still think come playoff time, they're a great team. I think it is there. But I'd be lying if I didn't say that there was a little bit of a sophomore slump through the first 3 weeks. There's a little bit of growing pains in this offense, and they're kind of trying to figure out who they are and who they kind of were from last season.
Yeah, well, I think part of it with them is like you got the big three at receiver, and it feels like, who is the go-to guy? Like Diggs is it one game, then it's Nico Collins, and it could be Tank Dell. Like it doesn't feel like we know which is the one to
Right.
rely on. I mean, all three are great talents and have had big seasons in the past, but it's almost like the old cliche, too many mouths to feed,
Yeah.
I feel like with that case. And, they were without Joe Mixon in the last game, so that obviously impacted the running game. I think he's scheduled to come back for their next game against a much lesser opponent that they should handle in the Jacksonville Jaguars. More on that when we get to the picks, but hasn't gone well in Jacksonville. Yeah, I think with the Texans, it's just a matter of finding that identity. I agree with you. Like, they're going to be fine. They've got too much talent, but I did feel like they were such a trendy pick that they weren't going to sneak up on people this
Yeah.
year, that it was going to be a little bit of a harder road, and I think we have seen that so far through
Yeah.
3 games.
Yeah, for sure. I think that is well said. I do expect things come that halfway point or so of the season. This team, I believe in them is going to be clicking. But right now, hey, they are going through some growing pains of figuring out who's getting the ball, what's happening. And in this game, they got bested by a superior defense and defensive mind in Brian Flores. It was incredibly, incredibly impressive. Brian, I'm going to go to a weird one that might shock you because I think it's something to talk about. I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but the Indianapolis Colts beat the Chicago Bears 21-16, and I want to talk about this game particularly because I want to talk about the two young quarterbacks and Anthony Richardson for the Colts and Caleb Williams respectively for the Bears. They've been bad, okay, and this game was maybe one of the ugliest games you'll ever watch. And people look 21-16. If you actually watch this game like I did, this was a bad game to watch. And these are, and I see some people that are Caleb Williams supporters. I do believe in him. I picked them to go to the playoffs. But those 363 yards, they're a little bit phony. They're a little bit phony. He was missing wide open passes, underthrowing guys, running into sacks. He has looked so out of sorts in the first 3 weeks. I understand rookies go through growing pains. Everyone goes, well, look at Peyton Manning's rookie year. True. But you also have to take into account that was a way harder league to play quarterback in because defenses could do way, way more physical plays against the quarterback, receivers, everybody. This league, I know, has struggled this season with quarterback play, but this doesn't look good, Brian. And we talked about this kind of in our towards our last end of the shows in the playoff time where I said, hey, it looks like they'll probably draft Caleb Williams. Everybody in the world knew that. Why are you keeping Matt Eberflus? Why would you have a defensive coach there who has not really done anything, still stay there, them potentially flop, and then have to get rid of him and then bring in a new coach in Caleb's second year? And even though I still believe in them and I still thought they're going to make the playoffs and I still think they have a chance, it's not looking great right now. And these were my concerns. And I was never excited about Shane Waldron when he was with the Rams, when he was with the Seahawks. This is not a guy that really has a, dare I say, progressive minded offense. And it just feels like we're seeing that play out. And that offensive line, probably by me and a lot of other people, it was a big miss. It was very overrated for where we thought, it's kind of solid. Maybe like a top 14, 15 line. They look really bad, like a bottom 5 line right now. And that has hampered it. Keenan Allen's done what he's done the last few years and be hurt and not really available. We've seen DJ Moore be frustrated. And this defense at times has looked good and times has looked not good. So I don't know if you want to take the Richardson part of it or you want to talk about Caleb, but I felt like we had to talk about these two young quarterbacks.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to the point too about the coach and Eberflus, I feel like it's always dangerous proposition, and this is how the Bears evaluated it last year, right? Basically, after they were out of it and they had no chance of making the playoffs, and they had a few decent wins down the stretch, and based on that projection, they said, okay, we played well enough, we're
Yep.
keeping Matt Eberflus. But that really isn't the best way to
No.
evaluate a team after the season is basically over. If you play well against some, not great teams, that shouldn't be the reason that you keep a head coach around. And that basically is what they did here. And he's a guy that's a defensive mind. And when you have a young quarterback, the ideal situation is that you have an offensive mind, like the
You pair
Colts
them
actually
together.
do, which Steichen, right? We know the Steichen and Richardson, it's been hit or miss. He was hurt last year, and now he's showing his very inaccurate self to be the case in the early part of this season. But with the Bears, it's really just kind of been the perfect storm of things where all the hype going in was contingent on the number one overall pick coming in and making his mark right away. Well, he's struggled, and the ship has sunk with him.
Yeah.
I know it's only 3 games, and maybe you can pick out a positive here or there, but by and large, it just hasn't been good enough quarterback play across the board. And like you said, Keenan Allen hasn't helped because he's been hurt. And now, by the way, you got Roma Dunze, I think, has popped up on the injury
Again.
report. They took him. in the first round. So a lot of issues with this offense. They don't really have a great running game with DeAndre Swift so far. It just hasn't all come together for this Bear team that everyone was so high on, thinking with this generational talent, which gets thrown around far too often. We
Yep.
cannot make every number one pick a generational talent. Was Bryce Young a generational talent? I mean, it feels like
Yeah.
every number one pick we want to label the guy as that. And generational talent only comes around once in a generation.
Yeah.
Well, I just feel like that's getting thrown around too much, and I don't know that Caleb Williams is going to live up to quite that billing. And as a result, the Bears, to me, I wasn't buying the hype, and so far, they haven't come close to achieving it.
Listen, they got me hook, line, and sinker at the moment. I know it's early through the season here. Eberflus did talk about Johnson is going to get more of the carries in the backfield beside DeAndre Swift, which that kind of seems like a needed change to see if they can get anything going there because this run game has been putrid. But right now, I'm eating crow, Bry, across the league, right? I'm eating crow on this podcast. I'm eating crow everywhere. I believed in the young quarterbacks, in a Trevor Lawrence, in a Caleb Williams. I ain't looking too good right now. And really, this team should be 0-3 because if Will Levis wasn't Will Levis, the Titans won that game in week 1. So they have not played well. We'll talk about when they're coming up with the Rams here, who are flying high off of their win last week when they looked dead in the water. There's serious concerns going on there in Chicago, but it also, at the same time, feels more of the same, right? Like Dylan on this, our friend Dylan is always quoted and said they're Jets East or they're Jets Central, right? Like it just feels like they're the Jets of the NFC. Like they are historically, insularly run by a family. They don't have a lot of money. They don't make a lot of smart free agency moves. They miss on draft picks, and they're always about defense, defense, defense. And they've never had a 4,000-yard quarterback. They're the only franchise in the league. Like it just doesn't make any sense what is going on. And it's 3 weeks. I'm not ready to push the panic button completely, but there is some worrying signs here. And on the other side with the Colts, I like Shane Steichen. I think he's a really good coach. These are the concerns as a Florida Gators fan that I saw with Andy Richardson. There's talent. There is supreme level talent where you could go, wow, that's like a Patrick Mahomes wow, right? Like that's a Josh Allen wow. That's incredible. But the guy in college was like a 55 completion percentage guy. In this game, he goes 50%. He's throwing like around 49 to 52% this year through 3 games. That's not an NFL quarterback. That's not even an NFL backup.
No.
That's putrid. And he was hurt all last season for the most part. Only played like 60 plays or something like that. And now what you have this season, it's not good enough there either. I think this Colts team, it was nice to see Jonathan Taylor get back to his old self in this game, but there's talent on this team. It's just, is their quarterback going to even play average? And right now, I have no reason to believe in him either.
I feel like with Richardson, there's going to be some games where he flashes that talent and, throws for close to 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And there's also going to be clunkers. I
Yeah.
just feel like the Colts are going to be a team that kind of rides these highs and lows. They're going to be a team that has to feature their star running back
Yeah.
in Taylor, who looks all the way back. I think for Richardson, you got to take some pressure off of him by running the ball. And when you do throw it a lot to Taylor because he can be a weapon in the passing game as well. They've got some other decent weapons. I mean, Pittman hasn't really come around so far to start this season, but I just think with Richardson, he's very much a boomer bust play. I mean, this past week was a bust and a winning effort because, they got a good performance out of the running back and the defense, but if you're hanging around a 52% completion percentage, you're just not going to last in the NFL. They're going to have you replaced, and it's just not going to cut it.
It's not going to at all. Probably 2 more games I want to talk about before we get to our picks, and we can just quickly run through them. I didn't even want to. Bry really wanted me to do this. I'm giving a shout out to the Los Angeles Rams. They beat the Niners 27-24. Of course, I'm a huge Rams fan. I'm proud of them. This is a huge comeback now, 2 victories in a row against the Niners dating back to last season. Some people I saw out there online, I don't know if I would go with this, but said that this might be Kyle Shanahan's worst regular season loss that he's had. You're talking about a team that is really up by double digits with about 6 in change to go in the fourth quarter. A team that quickly was out 14-0 against the Rams. the Niners, who kind of make, the Rams don't really have a home field advantage, but particularly against the Niners flood that stadium with usually 65 to 70% Niner fans, which is always a disgrace. I always hate seeing all that red and gold in the stands every time they play a game there. And for them to lose this game in the fashion that they did, and I don't want to hear excuses, Bri. I don't want to go, oh, well, we're hurt. There was no Debo. There's no Kittles, no McCaffrey. Well, the Rams have no Kupp and no Puka and no offensive line. Okay, so like they're even more hurt than you are. Their whole secondary is banged up. And for them to squeak out a win like this, kudos to that offense, Sean McVay and Matt Stafford, man. This guy, I'm telling you right now, he's not going to get any MVP votes. They're 1-2. It's only been 3 games. But this guy is playing as well as any quarterback is in the league right now. And you go, well, Pete, that's ridiculous. They just got blown out by the Cardinals last week. He played well in that game. They didn't get blown out because of him in that game. They got blown out because the Cardinals were riding high, a win they've been looking for a decade. And also they got blown out because we had 3 more significant injuries that happened in that game in Arizona. They just got beat down. That's plain and simple. That doesn't mean that Stafford hasn't had a great season. He has played really well up to this point. And this game, I think, showcased what he can be when you give him full control of the offense, when they could. And it's just nice to see them playing up to the physicality of the Niners, where this team normally gets constantly pushed around. It looked like that early on. And to have the comeback that they did, kind of a la shades or reminiscent of what they did in that NFC Championship game like 3 years ago. It was a great win. It absolutely saved the season. This team dropped 0-3. The season was over. It was done. And I said when they were 0-2, I said their season's kind of like 90-95% over. I expected them to get handled in this game. It looked like they were going to. They're dropped 0-3. It's over. They still have a tough schedule ahead of them. But what a win, Bri. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't feeling good after this one.
Oh, I could just imagine how pumped up you were because not only the come from behind win, but against your hated, fiercest rival there in the Niners, a game that you expected nothing from your team. I could just imagine the glee that you were experiencing, and really one of the more improbable wins you could ever have because the deficit late in the game they're down to rally and win. I mean, it's what less than 5 minutes left, and
It
they're
was about
down
6
two
minutes.
scores.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was really just a remarkable job. And in a game where you didn't have your top 2 receivers, you needed somebody to step up, and that guy was Tutu Atwell, right? He made some big
He
plays,
was huge.
including the one big play that set up the game-winning field goal. Kyron Williams is proving last year was not a fluke, right? Another stellar game from him, 3 total touchdowns. So he's really been a nice
Yep.
weapon, and I mean Stafford deserves a ton of credit to be playing the way he is with basically no one healthy up front protecting him
Yep.
is remarkable. I had kind of been on the fence as far as Stafford and like the Hall of Fame discussions, but as time goes on, he's making a compelling
He
case for
is.
Canton. I mean, he really has had quite a career. Was on a lot of teams in Detroit where the defenses were just putrid, and he was keeping that team afloat. He has the Super Bowl, of course. He has plenty of seasons with gaudy passing totals. I mean, he really has had a remarkable career, and what he's doing this year with not a whole lot
No.
around him is really impressive.
Yeah, it's big. They got Alaric Jackson back at left tackle. He missed the first 2 games due to suspension that he had in the offseason. You could see what he did and what that offensive line looked like against Bosa and that pass rush. Significant difference there. Tutu played great. He made key plays. And this game all turned on a fake punt. The Rams are down 14-0. They're about to punt the ball away again. It's like 4th and 8. They get it. They get the first down. They go down, drive a touchdown, and all of a sudden it's 14-7 going into halftime, and the game felt different. And then, of course, it looks like it's getting away again. The Niners, Moody misses a kick down the stretch. Rams come right back down the field. Touchdown, stop, winning field goal, and then get the stop there on a drop pass that ended up being by a backup wide receiver in Bell for the Niners. All in all, you got to say it was impressive. Brock Purdy, hey, he was great in this game. He played great with his leg and his arm. And in the end of the day, the Rams stole one. It was a great win. It had to feel good for McVay, who not only gets on the board this season, but also historically gets owned by Kyle Shanahan. That had to feel so good to save the season this past Sunday.
I it was just funny. I'm sure you saw it too. At McVay, he walks into the press room after the game for his post game press conference. He's just like, "Wow, holy bleep!"
Yeah.
It was-
Yeah, I love that. And, in a game where the Niners outgained them 425 to 296, you typically don't see a team winning that when the Niners pass for 288 to 198. When they had the advantage, when they had the turnover advantage, like you would think that they had more sacks than the Rams, they controlled the ball more than the Rams in time of possession, 33 to 26, and the Rams still steal a win in an overpacked stadium of Niner fans. You got to be proud of the team there, and I'm certainly proud of them, even if it's for 1 week. What a win to save the season, especially against that team. Brian, the final game I wanted to talk about was one of the two Monday night games, and of course the Bills blew out the Jags. We'll talk more about them in the picks, but the Commanders take down the Bengals 38-33 in what was an extremely entertaining game. And I'm going to take the Commanders side of it. I don't know if you want to take the Bengals side of it. Jayden Daniels, man. This guy, we know what the rookie quarterbacks have been, the ones that have played so far this season, right? Drake May's barely played. We know Penix obviously hasn't played. Knicks, hey, got a win this first week, but those first 2 weeks were really bad. This last week, a lot better. And then we just talked about what Caleb has been. Daniels is underrated right now because this guy sets the rookie record all-time 91 completion percentage this game. He missed 2 passes the entire game, Bry. And I don't know if that's more of a bad look on Lou Anarumo's defense for Cincinnati or how good this kid could potentially be in another shout out in Cliff Kingsbury's offense right now. The Commanders look like a threat. They look like they can compete with almost anybody. And I know someone who you were believing in them. You got to be feeling pretty good, even though it's 3 weeks. You got to be feeling good where this team looks like the trajectory is headed.
Well, I picked him to come in second place, and I'd have to be honest, like after we did that show, and I'm sort of like reviewing in my head who I picked, and I'm like, did I really pick Washington as a playoff team? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was almost second guessing myself. And look, they still have a long way to go, but the signs have been good. I mean, this quarterback, he looks like the real deal. I mean, if you're a young quarterback, I think one of the best things you can do is show that you won't turn the ball over at a high level, and that's something, right, that's been a problem with Caleb Williams. But that was so much the mark for Stroud a year ago in
Yep,
his great rookie season. Kept the interceptions down. I think he threw 5 all season.
he did.
Daniels is taking care of the football and really just looks the part. I mean, he can move around, he can run when he needs to. He got Terry McLaurin going in this game. It had been a slow start for the number one receiver, but he goes for 100 yards, including a score. You got Christian McCaffrey's brother in the mix there, and
Yeah,
Luke
right?
McCaffrey, an impact. The Eckler addition was kind of an under the radar move, I think, for that offense, and I think
Yeah,
he ended up getting
he
hurt.
did.
But I mean, as a guy who can run and catch the ball, that's a nice piece in that offense. And I think for Cliff Kingsbury, he's a guy have great success as a head coach, as we know, but I think he's someone who's just much more suited as a coordinator. And
Yep.
I think he's found a nice spot there. Dan Quinn, there were questions, of course, as the head coach, but I felt like maybe the first time around was a learning experience for him. A lot of good signs there. I will say, like, the defense leaves a lot to be
It
desired. I mean,
does.
that secondary is good. Burrow played a terrific game in the losing effort. I mean, he looked like his self, and they're going to play games where they give up a lot of points because that defense just doesn't stop a lot of people. If Daniels keeps it up, going to be a team that's going to be hanging around here, and they're not a doormat like some
No.
people thought coming into the season.
No, there's something about the confidence that he has, right? Like you get that audio call where like it's at the end of the game, it's fourth down, and he's saying, let's go for it. And he gets it with an incredible play that he made on the sideline. He was doing it with his legs and juking guys out. He was doing it with the rollout to the right passes, little kind of 5-yard passes to the sideline. He was incredible. And when you don't punt in 2 straight games now, that's elite level stuff right there. Like they have been an elite level offense these last 2 weeks, and he's got everybody's attention now. Where it's like, whoa, This might be the offensive rookie of the year right now. We know it's only 3 weeks, but this guy could be changing the culture there in Washington. And then on the other side, yeah, I'll give Burrow his credit. He was great, 29 to 38, 324, 3 touchdowns. But it's just like, I'm not going to hate on him, but it's just like, it feels like when they need a play to get over the hump, they can't do it. And they couldn't match Washington stride for stride in this game, even though they were home. They were terrible against the Patriots week 1. And then, like, they outplayed the Chiefs and had that one critical turnover that ends up going a fumble for a touchdown, and they lose that game, right? Like, it's just, there is something, and I told people to be warned about this. There is something missing from the Cincinnati team. They are now 0-3 again, and that defense looked terrible. And I don't know if it was just Daniels that good, or Lou Amaruno's defense is just that bad this season. We're going to see as time goes on, but I'm just sick of looking at, I'm not trying to be a Bengals hater. I love Joe Burrow, but I am sick of looking at these power rankings and being like, oh yeah, they're the 13th best team in the league. I'm like, bro, they're 0-3. Like, at what point are we going to go, hey, maybe this team is not that great. Like, maybe we should look at that. It's not like they've played a gauntlet schedule. Like, yes, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, but they play the Chiefs the best out of any team in the league, I would say. They played the Patriots, and most people coming into the season did not have Washington that high. So, like, and the 2 losses you've had are at home. At some point, we have to turn around and go, hey, maybe some of the teams that have beaten them should be ahead of them in the power rankings. I don't think that's a hot take to say.
I think they get one more week, and if they lose the next game, then everybody's off the ship with Cincinnati because they're playing the Panthers this week. We're going to get to our picks momentarily. That's a game that if they drop that one and they're 0-4, suddenly then it's
I'm telling you right now,
we
Brian,
can't keep.
They lose that game, and I didn't mean to cut you off. They lose that game and drop to 0-4. They better be in the bottom 5 of power rankings. I'm telling you right now. I don't care who's on the team, what they went to a Super Bowl 3 years ago. I don't care. If you're 0-4 and you didn't win the entire month of September and you lost to 3 what most people consider going into the season terrible teams, definitely I consider 2 teams that are going to end up picking in the Panthers and the Patriots in the top 3 this season. You're done. You're done, and I do not want to see you above the bottom 5 spot in the power rankings. Absolutely.
Somehow they could be, 0-6, and Burrow would be preaching, "Oh, we're right in this thing. It's a slow
Yeah, and there'll be
start,
people on
but we'll
TV
come
who get
around."
paid way more than us that will be like, this team could be a sneaky wild card team. Watch out, they might get hot. And I'll be like, what are we talking about? Like, what is going on? If they do not beat the Panthers this week, oh my!
It starts with the mentality. The quarterback is just such a cool customer that nothing ever rattles him. That they always seem to be able to recover from these slow starts. But I'm with you. I mean, at some point, if you're 0-4 or even 0-5, the season's gonna be over. Like, for now, I think the season is still salvageable. It's going to be difficult. There aren't many teams that come back from 0-3 even to make the playoffs, but they got to get it turned around quickly because you cannot just keep relying on these abysmal starts and then you just turn around from it.
This is their upcoming schedule. Like, the Panthers this week, they better win that game. Then they play the Ravens, I think right now, even though they're 1-2, they're a better team, and Burrow he's not played that well against his division historically. Then they get the Giants. The Browns, again, has a losing record against them. And then you're going Eagles, Raiders. That should be a winnable game. Ravens again. Chargers maybe back fully healthy. And then you're into the bye. You come out of the bye, you got Steelers, Cowboys. I mean, there's winnable games in there, and there's other games that are going to be tough. I don't know, Brian. I don't know. I think there are moments that if you're not panicking in Cincinnati, you better start soon, because I hear this every season, and I've heard it all this season. They're 0-1. They're 0-2. They'll be fine. They're 0-3. I'm like, where does the buck stop at some point? It's in week 1. The defense looks really good. The offense is putrid. In week 2, they outplay the Chiefs on both sides of the ball. They still lose. This game, the offense is great. Their defense is atrocious. Can't get a single stop. I mean, when is both sides of the ball going to show up at the same time? I think it's fair to wonder.
For them, it better be this. It better start this week.
Insane stuff. I don't want to hear any more people. They lose this game. There better not be a single punter. I'll turn off my TV if I see anyone go, oh, 0-4, they're still dangerous. Just shut up. Stop. All right, let's get to our picks here. That was fun. Let's get to our picks here for week 4. Of course, week 4 kicked off as the game we already talked about in the Cowboys and the Giants. But Sunday kicks off at 1 o'clock with the Saints and the Falcons in a really anticipating game. The Falcons have kind of had 2 games go either way. They had the comeback win against the Eagles, losing a heartbreaker to the Chiefs last week on Sunday Night Football. And the Saints, riding high the first 2 weeks, really came back to earth at home against Philadelphia. They couldn't get anything going. Who you got in this game winning it in Atlanta?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting game. I mean, I feel like both teams are kind of a bit of an enigma. I might surprise you here because I was high on the Falcons coming into the year, but I'm taking New Orleans. I just like this team. They're top to bottom so far, and I mean, through 2 games, you had people talking about how this offense was, among the best in the league, and now after one performance, it's like we want to just forget about them. I mean, I think they could still be decent, and the Falcons, I don't really know exactly what to make of them. I mean, Cousins doesn't look like he's all the way back from that Achilles. They got the great running game, but I think the Saints are going to win. Might be a surprise. I don't know, but I'm taking New Orleans.
I am also taking the New Orleans Saints as well. I think this is going to be a bounce back game. I think I would feel better about picking the Falcons if the Saints were 3-0 and they had won last week as well. But coming off a loss at home, they've played this team historically well, even last season when they weren't all that good, the Saints as well. There's just something right now with the Falcons. I'm not writing them off at all, but they're still like fluctuating of who they really are and what's going on. And I think the Saints are going to nab them in this one. Those Bengals go play the Carolina Panthers in Carolina. I mean, Brian, it's my fault, man. I said it on the show last week. I said, hey, I'm picking the Raiders to beat the Panthers, but man, the Panthers, Andy Dalton, they might get that new QB bump, just like, interim head coaches provide to a team. And yet my stupid self still didn't pick the Panthers. Of course, they roll the Raiders last week. Andy Dalton 3-0 all time coming into that game against the Raiders. And that meant something. You saw the energy that this team had. And man, was that we're not going to talk about it here, but man, was that a detriment to what Bryce Young is, seeing that a backup quarterback could step right in with the exact same team and play as well as they did. And Andy Dalton looked great, looked like his old self, that red rifle there, red rocket, whatever you want to call him by, that he was in Cincinnati here. Playing an interesting game against the Bengals. I'm taking the Bengals. I'm telling you right now, Bengal fans, Bengal players, whatever, who are probably never going to see this podcast. You lose this game and go 0-4, I might not pick you for the rest of the season. You better win this game against the worst team in football, Dalton or not. Give me the Bengals.
Well, I think it kind of says the story of the state of the NFL right now when the Carolina Panthers have the same record as the 49ers and the Ravens. They're all 1-2. I mean, and yeah, that performance last week. I mean, look, I thought the Panthers would play better. I thought they'd get a boost. I mean, I said it last week that the move to Dalton gave them far better chance to win. But my goodness, I mean, that game was 31-7 at one point.
It was over in a blink.
That was really unbelievable. But we talked about the Bengals. I mean, of all the reasons we said before, they got to get it going. They're a desperate team here at 0-3. They got to get a win on the road. Look, it's not a lock, I don't think, by any means, but I do think they'll be able to get it done.
The Rams go to the Chicago Bears. Going to be an interesting game, right? Because maybe there are people on the other side of it, not like you and I, that are like, hey, I got a little bit of hope for what Caleb gave last season, even though he's looked bad. I mean, last game, he threw for 363. There might be something there coming off what, as we talked about, a Rams saving the season win against the 49ers. I think this game's going to be tight. The Bears still have a solid defense, and the Rams are banged up. But in the end, I think the Rams are going to be able to figure it out more. Hey, this might be ugly. It might be 17-13. It might be 17-16. Like, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, but I'm taking the Rams to go into Chicago, beat Caleb Williams, drop them to 1-3, and the Rams to get back to 500.
Yeah, the score I had in mind was 16-13.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be
we're
low.
right on the same. Yeah, that kind of a game. I mean, I've been very wrong on the Rams the last 2 weeks because I thought they beat Arizona, they got clobbered, and then of course, like just about everybody,
Yeah.
we thought the 49ers would handle them, and we know, as we articulated, they had the great comeback, but Bears are just not inspiring much confidence right now, as we also talked about. Roma Dunze, I think, is a question mark going in. Keenan Allen hasn't made his mark yet, so I'm going with the Rams to keep up the momentum from last week. Maybe start to get a little healthier on the offensive line, get some bodies back in there, and I'll take them to get their second straight win.
And heck, if they could win this game, regardless of what happens with the Packers game next week, you go 2-3 into the bye because they have an early bye this season, get healthy. I'd be totally okay with that, and I think McVay would be as well. Maybe the game of the week, Brian. The Vikings go to Lambeau Field. A little bit of revenge storylines going here, particularly for Aaron Jones going into this game. Vikings riding super high. Packers playing great with Malik Willis. I mean, he looked like a guy that wasn't even a backup. The Titans literally traded him to the Packers right before the season started, knowing they were going to play the Packers early on. And what Matt LaFleur has done, the job he has done, has been excellent. For me, it's only 3 weeks. He is by far the runaway head coach of the year for me. I think he is just what he has done keeping this team afloat without Jordan Love. I think it's going to go back and forth. I think this game is going to be tough, but I'm going to surprise you. I'm going to take the Minnesota Vikings in this one. I believe more in what Brian Flores' defense is going to do against Malik Willis, stuff he has never seen before, more than what I think Sam Darnold is going to be able to perform. I think it's going to be a tight, kind of rugged physical game, not high scoring, but I think the Vikings will prevail in the end, get to 4-0. Give me Minnesota.
Do we know for sure Love is out of this game?
I mean, we don't know perfectly right now, but it seems like he is trending to that. I'll go look it up real quick. Um,
Okay, so
he remains limited, they're saying, in practice. He's questionable, kind of like he's been. I don't have a lot of confidence that he's playing in this game.
I mean, like you said, Malik Willis' last 2 games has been very sharp. The team has played well. As you know, I've been high on the Vikings, so I'm probably going to surprise you with this pick. I'm going with the home Packers. I feel like
It's not
it's
bad.
fair to say I underestimated this team. They are a solid football team, top to
They are.
bottom. They're showing that they can win games even without Jordan Love. Now, I wasn't the biggest Love guy to begin with. The fact that they're winning with Malik Willis shows just how good the foundation is on this team, both sides of the ball. So I think at home, Lambeau, very tough place to play.
Yeah.
I think the Vikings are going to stub their toe at some point. I think they're good, but I think this is a spot where they could get picked off, and I'm taking the Packers like a 20-17 kind of game. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
close, but Packers are a tough opponent to go against, especially at home. I think I'm riding Green Bay here.
They absolutely are. And I went back and forth on where I wanted to go with this pick, but I just trust in what Brian Flores' defense is going to show Malik Willis. And then, LaFleur, I just looked up the quotes here, being as vague and cagey as he usually is, saying, we'll see what happens. It's encouraging, but, we're taking it day to day. To me, I'm leaning more toward Love is probably going to miss another week. The Jacksonville Jaguars, Bri, play a sad song right now. Go into Houston, and we talked about what Houston has been. They haven't been overly impressive, but there's no way I can pick the Jags right now. Give me the Texans. I said at the beginning of the year, I will sink with this ship. Man, am I drowning right now. I am bailing water. The Jags have looked horrific. They got blown out by the Bills this past Monday night. Doug Peterson looks like an easy early lock for fire midseason. I don't know what has happened to Trevor Lawrence. He's lost 8 straight games going back to last season. Yeah, I don't know what more to say. I'm baffled. Give me the Texans.
Yeah, I will say that I would not be surprised if Trevor Lawrence, the way things are going, that a benching could be in the offing. You know, they have
For
Mac
Mac
Jones, who
Jones?
we know is
Oh, my.
nothing special, but He might get some run here. I mean, Lawrence has been inept. I mean, some of the throws in the Monday Nighter against Buffalo, he had a clean pocket. He had time all the time in the world and a wide open receiver and airmailed him 10 feet over his head
Yeah,
for an
it's been
interception.
bad.
I mean, that kind of play, you're just not going to last in this league. I mean, look, we know he's talented. He was the number one overall pick, but he might not be a
He's
guy who has
generational.
the extras that you need, right, to play the position. So, yeah, I mean, the Jags are in a world of trouble. I fully expect the Texans to get back on track after what was an embarrassing performance. They're back their home field. I expect a big game from Stroud and him to light it up, and the Texans to win this one by double
And
digits.
you know what? I think they paid Lawrence this offseason. They're still going to have some belief in him. But playing a season like this is how the Jags get moved to another city. Like this is how they get kicked out of Jacksonville because no one really cares about football there, and this is how they get moved to a more exciting city. It's bad right now. The Steelers go to the Colts, and this should be an interesting one. But right now, as I said earlier, I'm not even a big. I'm in this weird mode, right, where like the Steelers are 3-0, and I don't believe in them at all, and I don't think that's a crazy take. This very much feels like that Steeler team, and I think it was the last season as Roethlisberger, where they were like 10-0, 11-0, or maybe it was the second to last season, and then they lost like 5 of the last 6, and then got bounced in the first round of the playoffs. That's what it feels like this team is. Their offense just feels super limited. I still do not believe in Justin Fields. That defense has played great, but knock on wood, I'm not wishing anything. But it just feels like it's always a matter of time before TJ Watt gets hurt. And we know what this team is without TJ Watt. In this game, I think they're going to roll. I think they're going to beat up on the Colts. But even if they're 4-0, I do not believe in what the Steelers are. But in this one, give me them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'm buying them as an AFC championship team or a
Yeah.
Super Bowl team or something like that, but as far as to make the playoffs, they look like they're well on their
A little
way. I
bit.
mean, the defense has been smothering the offense while not explosive, is, playing conservative but not turning the ball over. I think that's a big key, and Justin Fields' play has been like fine. I mean, I think right now, if you're the Bears, you would take the way Fields has played over what you've gotten from Caleb
Isn't
Williams.
that ironic?
So, as crazy as that is, yeah. So I think in this game, I mentioned Anthony Richardson's going to have his hot days and his cold days. Well, when you're going against this Steeler defense,
Yikes.
it's likely to be on the cold side. So yeah, I'm taking Pittsburgh.
The Denver Broncos go into the Jets. The Jets, I think the last time I looked at this line, are 7.5 point favorites. I can't remember the last time the Jets were over a touchdown favorites. That's pretty wild to see. I'm taking the Jets in this one. I think this game could be a little bit closer than people think because I think the Broncos showed a little something in Tampa Bay last week, but rookie QB, defense hasn't been that great. Rodgers and that Jets, 10 days of rest. I think they're riding high there. I see them handling this game. I don't know if they cover the 7.5. I see it more about 5.5. It would be more of a comfortable spread for me, but I think they're going to win this game in what is the Nat Hackett Revenge Bowl. Give me the Jets.
Well, I think Rodgers made a good point this week when talking to the media that he said the Jets have to show that they can play with success, right? And coming off the kind of performance that they did last week and now winners of back to back. So I think that's a good point. How do you play, after the expectations have sort of been ratcheted up here in the last couple weeks? I think they're going to handle their business against a team that I don't think is very good. I still have my questions on how the Jets will hold up over the long haul.
Yeah.
Rodgers' health still a big question. I'm still not there as far as the Jets and being a legitimate Super Bowl team. Obviously, you had to love what you saw last Thursday night, and we talked all about that. But I think they are going to have their good games, and I think it's going to be another good one here against Denver, their third straight to get to 3-1.
Yeah, I was kind of so more on his comments there. I don't think they've kind of earned up to that level to even make a comment like that, but that's fine. But we talked about if the Jets were going to make any type of noise this early portion of the schedule after the Niners game, you're playing the Titans, the Patriots, and then the Broncos. You got to be winning all these games, right? Like, and they've done 2 out of the 3 now. They need to complete the circuit. They need to get these wins early on because their schedule gets much harder in the back end. But hey, I have them winning this week. The Eagles play the Bucs, and it's an interesting game, right? Because both of these teams are 2-1. They both feel weird, right? Like the Bucs were playing great week 1, beat Detroit in week 2, laid an egg last week against the Broncos, and then the Eagles, like they've had these up and down games, right? Like they steal sort of a win. It was a weird game in Brazil against the Packers. Then they blow the game at the end against the Falcons, and then last week everyone's picking the Saints, and they play this ugly 15-12 game in New Orleans, and Barkley kind of seals the deal. Him and Goddard win that game when they also lost Devontae Smith. They were already down A.J. Brown. I've been back and forth on who's going to win this game. I'm not entirely sure right now because we don't know the status of Smith or Brown. They're still questionable. We're not sure if they're going to play in this game. And then you have the Bucs on the other side where that secondary is demolished. I mean, there's nobody playing over there right now. I think the spread right now is a 1.5 point favorite to the Eagles, but at the moment, I'm taking a coin flip. I'm taking the Bucs at home. Like, I think they could squeak out a win here, get back on track. I think Baker at the moment is the better quarterback than Hurts, even though he didn't look like it last week. Hurts since the Super Bowl has not looked good. That's just the truth. He's had like something like 6 or 7 straight games dating back to last season of throwing an interception. That's not good at all. And I just feel like this is going to be another ugly game, much like that they played against the Saints. But I have the Bucs pulling this one out.
Yeah, I would have bet that the game last week, the Eagles and Saints, that would have been a high-scoring game, like 30 to
Yeah.
27, and instead it was a
Total
defensive
opposite.
struggle. The
Yeah.
score at halftime, it was 3-0.
Yeah.
There were 3 total points by the half, and the Eagles pulled it out, 15 to 12 or
Yeah.
something weird. I think they're the better team here. I'm taking Philly. I know they could be down some weapons, and there is the possibility they're without both and Devontae
Yep.
Smith I've seen on the injury report.
Yep.
So that's a bit concerning. But you've got Goddard, who had his coming out party
Finally.
last game. I mean, just a huge game from him. It always seems like the Eagles have like that reliable tight end target, right? Like it was Zach Ertz before
Brent
Goddard, then it
Selleck.
was Brent Selleck. Yeah, they always have. It's never like a
Yeah.
superstar, but it's kind of
Yep.
that old reliable guy for the
Yep.
quarterback, and Goddard the latest in line. So I'm not exactly sure what to make of Philly and Nick Sirianni. There's a lot of questions going on there, but I do think the Eagles will be able to win this game in a playoff rematch from last year where they got their doors blown off,
Yeah.
where they had been checked out. I mean, goodbye at the hotel. Season was over. I think they're a little more in it this time around, and they'll get the win.
Yeah. It's a very coin flip game for me. I have no idea where I went, and I picked the home team, and I think the Bucs are going to bounce back. The Commanders go to the Cardinals, and all of a sudden, this is an interesting game, right? 2 prolific kind of passers here early on, and Kyler Murray and Daniels, 2 runners, and 2 interesting teams. The Cardinals, they played kind of mediocre against the Lions last week. We know the blowout win they had against the Rams, and they played great against the Bills week 1. I don't really know what to get from them. And then the Commanders have played kind of above what you would think they're going to do. Both defenses are very suspect. I'm not sure where you want to go with it right now, but I'm taking the rookie. I'm taking the Commanders in this game. I think they're going to go into Arizona, and this could be the most entertaining and explosive game of the weekend. We might have high 30s for both of these teams. I really think it could be that type of game because these 2 defenses are just not good. But I think in the end, I've liked what I've seen from Daniels. I think I'm going to pull this one out. Give me the Commanders.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what to do with
A
this
lot of
game.
toss-up games
I'm
this
kind
week.
of Yeah, like the other one, I felt better about Philly over Tampa. This one, I feel like is really just a coin flip. Both teams are kind of mirror images of each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where like the offense is clearly better than the defense. They can some explosive plays, but I'm gonna lead toward Washington. I mean, what the heck? I have them as a playoff team. I'm gonna ride Jayden Daniels and company to continue the strong play. I mean, he can do no wrong so far. He's
Right.
not turning the ball over. He's making big plays. Give me Washington to keep it going.
Patriots in the 4:05 game go to San Francisco. Um, Man, if the Niners lose this game, they're in a world of trouble. We know their injuries. Then you had the stuff today. I don't know if you saw this report where Ayuk looked like he got kicked out of practice through a temper tantrum over having to change his shorts or something. That whole situation is so weird. I don't know what is going on there. He's had a terrible start to the season. They have to win this game. The Patriots are not good. Give me the Niners. I think they should easily win this game, but you can't like the vibes that is going on in San Francisco right now.
And not only all of that, but today also Trent Williams popped up on the injury
Yep.
report with a toe injury. So if he's out of the lineup, that offense does not run nearly the same. I mean, either way, I would pick the Niners to win. I would say it could be a close game if they're without Williams and they continue to be without Debo, although he may be back after a 2-game absence. But I'm taking the Niners. I mean, they're infinitely more talented. I think they're going to get back on track here. I think they're showing signs, though, that you wonder, are they Super Bowl material? I think that is fair to question at this point, but in this game, I'm taking them all the way.
The Chiefs go to the Chargers, and man, this game was about to be 2-3-0 teams because I believe the Chargers would have beat the Steelers last week if Herbert did not exit that game. It's trending to Herbert not playing in this game. We know Bosa, as he always is banged up once again. This team's got injuries across the board. Even with a new coach that is way more competent, they cannot avoid this injury bug. And you're going against the two-time defending back-to-back Super Bowl champs. What was going to be an interesting game now might be Mahomes versus Taylor Heineke. Give me the Chiefs rolling in this one.
Yeah, I'm taking the Chiefs as well. It's funny though with the Chiefs, they're 3-0, and once again, the offensive issues are kind of popping
It's
up
so
again.
annoying,
And
dude.
suddenly,
It's crazy.
suddenly it's like now Mahomes isn't playing that great. Now it's
Right.
like, oh wait, is Mahomes no longer the best player in the league, or is Josh Allen taking that mantle? I
I'm
mean,
not
we're
getting
not
caught
going to
in
get
that
into
again.
that. Or we're not getting caught in that. I mean, I'm taking the Chiefs to win, but I will say, like the offense, the issues are popping up, and I don't believe this team can win the Super Bowl if Travis Kelce is not a central piece. He has been too important for too long. I don't think they can just survive no show after no show from Kelce. Clearly, I don't know what's going on. I mean, maybe all the distractions away from his football life are playing a role. It's certainly possible. But on the field, the guy doesn't look like the same player right now. And my point on the Chiefs is in order for them to be at their best, he has to be a big factor. I don't think they can win it all with him playing a complementary role.
I mean, listen, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He went on that incredible playoff run last year. It seems like, he is older, and maybe they're just saving him for those critical games right now. He's been seeing a lot of double coverage. That could be a lot of a part of it. I mean, Rice has been awesome. You like to see Worthy maybe get back to something. I just want to, if the Chiefs are going to win, I want to see Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes. Please get back to the electrifying player that I'm used to. I'm sick of watching 150, 200-yard games. Okay, you win, great. I want to see the fireworks. That's what I want to see the greatest quarterback
give me
do
the
in the
3 and
league.
4 touchdowns. Right, give me the 3 and 4
That's
touchdowns.
what I want to see. Get back to that. Maybe not this week because I am playing him in fantasy this week, but that's the player I do want to see out there. The 425 game between the Cleveland Browns and the Raiders. I mean, most people are clicking through this game. Who cares unless you're a fan of these teams? I don't even know who to go with. I guess I'm picking the Raiders in another coin flip game. Pierce had a weird thing about is Gardner Minshew starting next week? Oh, we'll have to talk to the players. What are you talking about, dude? You're literally the head coach. Like that was a weird situation. The Browns, they're a mess. I mean, who knows what the hell they are? I guess I'm picking the Raiders. I don't feel good about it at all. I could see the Browns stealing this, but Myles Garrett a little dinged up last week. Watson is, we know what he is. I have no idea. Give me the Raiders, I guess.
Yeah, I'm with you here. And by the way, Pierce also had like a weird thing after their no-show against Carolina where he talked about how his team made business
Yeah, I
decisions
saw that as
in
well.
that game. So, yeah, a lot of weird things happening there. Originally, I was on the Browns, and now I'm going with the Raiders. I think the Browns have too many injuries, too many problems, and Njoku's going to be out. And then I think I saw their two starting tackles on the offensive line are going to be out. So Watson doesn't give me enough to inspire any confidence. The Raiders maybe show some pride after their no-show last week. They're at home. I have to believe they're going to better, and I think they'll win this one.
Max Crosby has to have a Max Crosby like day for them to win this game. The Sunday night game kicks off with the Bills and Ravens. Could be another excellent matchup in this one. The Bills, yes, they haven't played teams that are that great, but they are blowing the doors off of teams right now, as they seem to do almost every September. And this is why I told people to relax. I felt like Aaron Rodgers. Relax. Have a little bit of patience with this team. People that are not picking the Bills to win the AFC East, you're out of your mind, I said before the season. People that are saying that they are going to be not even a playoff team, you're crazy. They got one of the best quarterbacks in football. They're going to figure it out. And we see sometimes when number one weapons like in Diggs leave, the quarterback could sometimes get better because they kind of spread the ball around. We're seeing that with the Bills right now. They are playing great. They're playing Baltimore that has been up and down. I don't know really who to pick. I'm kind of on both sides of the fence here of where I want to go. But right now, I got to trust my gut. The Buffalo Bills are a better team right now. They're better equipped. I think it's going to be a close game. I wouldn't be surprised if the Ravens win, but give me the Bills to go into Baltimore and win.
Yeah, I like that call. I think I'm going the other way here. I'm still a believer in the Ravens. I don't think we've seen nearly their best football yet to start this season. I mean, it really hasn't been that good. Now they got off to a great start last week in Dallas. They're up big and finally look like they're high flying, but then Justin Tucker misses a field goal, which he seems to be prone to do
Yeah,
lately. It's
yeah.
suddenly like the once automatic Tucker is
He
showing
might be near
some
the end of his career.
nicks. Yeah, I mean it's been a Hall of Fame career, but he does not look as sharp lately. But I think Lamar and company and Derrick Henry, who looked refreshed last week, had a big game against that Cowboys Swiss cheese run defense.
Yeah.
I think they're gonna have their way again here. Bills will be a formidable opponent. I think they're gonna have themselves a very good season. And right now, I think Josh Allen is playing better than I've ever seen him play in his career.
Yeah,
I
he's been
think it's
great.
been that high of a level. But I think the Ravens at home, this is a tough game, and I think they're going to get it done.
This is going to be a measuring stick for the Bills because this is really their first real quote unquote opponent so far this season. Going to be a huge game for both teams, in particularly the Ravens. They're doing this again, Bry, as we just had last week. Two Monday night games, and I hate when they do this. One at 7:30 and one at 8:15. It's like, why are we doing this? And the first one kicks off with the Titans and the Dolphins. I mean, who cares, right? I mean, you got Will Levis and Skylar Thompson. Could it be Tim Boyle again for the Dolphins? I mean, this is going to be a putrid game to watch. I'm taking the Titans because I just believe at some point they do have a little bit more talent in their quarterback. I think. I don't know. I mean, Levis is reckless. Who the hell knows what's going to go on? But I can't trust in what I saw in the Dolphins last week in Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. Give me the Titans, but who cares? I mean, really, about this game.
Yeah, well, I'm with you here. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how Miami is actually a point favorite. Not that it really matters much, but with their quarterback situation being as dire as it is, and their no-show last week in Seattle with just terrible quarterback play with the immortal Tim Boyle coming in, Jet fans
How
know
does this
all
man have
about
a
him.
job?
Uh, it's a good question. Um, why they cut Mike White? I mean, if they didn't cut Mike White, maybe he's playing and they're in a little
Oh,
better shape. But I'm taking Tennessee as well. I mean, this is a game that's probably going to be what 13-10, maybe not even.
literally.
And remember, these teams played. I want to say it was last year on a Monday night late in the season.
Yeah,
Remember, Miami completely choked
they
away the
did, and
game,
Tennessee came all
and
the way back.
Tennessee came all the way back. So that was really a shocking result. Now you got Miami with a second or third string quarterback. Tennessee at least has its starter out there,
Yeah.
so I believe that'll be enough.
And remember that too. That's where all the stuff started. Where they're like, "Man, Levis looks like a franchise quarterback." Where are all those people now 3 weeks into the season? Maybe jump the gun a little bit there. The final game of week 4, the 8:15 Monday night game, is a good one. The Seahawks go into Detroit, another rematch of a great game that happened last season. I think this one's going to be a lot of fun, but I'm going to take the home team in Detroit. I think they haven't looked great, but I think they're going to get over the hump. The Seahawks are, and this is not me being a Rams fan, I'm just being a truth teller. The Seahawks are a little bit of a fraudulent 3-0. They really haven't played anyone. They've played some, I mean, like we just talked about, they played Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. They played the Patriots. They've played some crappy teams to start the season. And all these people out here being like, oh, Geno's been great this season. I'm like, not even being a stats guy that he's 3 touchdowns to 3 picks. Watch the games. I mean, some of the passes and plays that he makes, you're like, what is going on? Like, yes, okay, he has a throw here or there with a very talented receiving core. They're like, damn, that's good. But he's not played well this season. Let's just be honest about it. And I think the Seahawks are still a solid team. Sure. Come playoffs, sure, they might be a playoff team. But I think against the Lions are gonna play them in a close game, but they're gonna win this one.
Yeah, I mean, all I've been hearing about is how well Geno has played, and the next great coach is Mike McDonald at 3-0, that he's like the coach of the year. But like you said, I mean, the quality of opponent has not exactly been stellar. So now you're playing a pretty good team. I'm with you. I'm taking the Lions in this game. I think it'll be within, 10 points, like a 7-point game. But I think Detroit at home with their full complement of weapons will hand Seattle its first loss of the season. I mean, it's bound to happen at some point. They're not this good, so I'm with you, Detroit.
And I could see it being a back and forth 1-score kind of game, but I don't know. The hype is a little too high. We don't have to go totally low, but the Seahawks hype a little too much right now. But guys, that's our picks and podcast here for week 4 here on First and 10, 2024 NFL season. I want to thank you if you've listened this far. We greatly appreciate you. Of course, always down below is our socials, our timestamps. All that stuff is in the description below. A lot of coin flip games this week, so I'm excited to see and read your comments of who you got this week. Bri, before we get out of here, any other final thoughts?
Just quickly, I want to revisit something we had brought up. I think it was the episode we had Calibro on. I brought up, of course, Tom Brady being in the broadcast booth and how I thought he'd be a bit of a disappointment. I'd say, like, off the bat, he didn't seem the most comfortable, right? Like, it wasn't a great performance that first week. I think as he's gotten into the groove a little bit, he's gotten a little better. I don't that I consider him a legitimate number 1 on a TV team like Greg Olsen clearly was, but I'm curious to get your kind of assessment as someone who watches the games and it likes especially the analyst side of the game, how you feel the big gun, of course, Brady is doing in that
I mean,
role.
I definitely feel, I agree with you. He has definitely improved week to week from that week 1, but he still feels stiff. Like, he just doesn't feel like, and I understand, and the people that don't understand or maybe didn't take it in college like we do, or you do a lot of that work even today in broadcasting. It is such a difficult job, especially as the color analyst, because you have to come in for a quick 5 to 7, 10 seconds, boom, 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 in the middle of the game, and have to do that consistently throughout the game. It's a very difficult thing to do. I believe in him because he's a workaholic. I think he will get better at it, but right now, yeah, it's been rough. And he's improved week to week, but it still leaves a lot to be desired, if I'm being honest.
I'm with you there. I think Romo, like, he hit ground running right away and was, like, good off the bat. And I know some people have kind of soured on him and maybe his performance has fallen off a little bit after getting that enormous contract. But he clearly, from the start, when you listen to him, you were like, wow, like, he's a presence, he's entertaining, and Brady has a ways to go before he gets to that.
Yeah, I believe in him. It's just maybe not get some Cowboy games. Get him into some other games. I think that will also help.
It's been all 3 Cowboys.
Yeah.
All Cowboys so far.
I think that would also help him. But hey, he doesn't control any of that. It's just what the network has, and what ends up always being the 425 Fox game seems to be the Cowboys. But guys, that is our thoughts, as I said here. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends if you'd be so kind. And until next week, we've been here every week. We've been consistent. Until next week for week 5, thank you for watching.